PNR Networks is a member of Patreon. Show your love for our shows by joining our ongoing fundraising campaign and get some fantastic perks in return. Check it out and become a Patreon sponsor. You can sign up at patreon.com, patreon.com/PNR Networks. And thanks for your support.
This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
It's Kim versus TC in the battle of the lists.
My list is better.
My list is better.
My list is better.
No, it's not. My list is better.
Kim or TC, who has the better list? From Subject Cinema, this is Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
In the immortal words of David Lee Roth, heard you missed us, we're back! Welcome to Front Row 5 and 10. I'm Kim Brown.
I'm TC Kirkham, our season premiere.
Yes, hooray!
Because we have to have seasons because iTunes says so.
Yes.
You're not giving us your usual spiel from the previous.
Well, I figured I'd shake things up a little bit since it is the season premiere.
Now, normally we'll be on Thursdays. Where this is going up on Saturday, the 7th of October, but it will normally be on Thursday nights, like always. This week we had some problems on Thursday and couldn't get it done, so we thought, well, we don't have anything going up Saturday, we'll do it Saturday. So here it is, a couple of days late. Next week we'll be back on Thursday. So in 5 days you'll get another new one. How fast is that?
Awesome.
What is it this week?
This week was a pick of mine. This week we are talking about our top 10 favorite comic strips. Now, these are comic strips that, you can read online or in the newspaper. What's a newspaper, Daddy?
Are there any only online strips on your list?
No, I don't know, actually. I don't think so. I'm not really sure. I know most of mine are in the papers around here. One of them might not be, so I'm not entirely certain. Right. And a few of mine are no longer. Yeah, there's no longer new ones, so they're out of circulation. Yep.
Alrighty.
In fact, several of mine fall into that category.
Yes, mine too.
Now that I look at it,
almost half of mine fall into that category. So it's like, okay, yeah, well, we got the classics.
Yep.
You got the classics. You got the new stuff. Should I start?
You should start since I came up with it. So.
My number 10 was a strip that never really got the deserving audience that it had. It was available, I think, at its peak in just over 500 newspapers, which is really low when you consider that other big strips are in 4,000 and 5,000 newspapers around the country.
Or even strips that are around the world.
That's what I mean, yeah. This one, however, was one of my favorites when I was growing up, and I had a couple of strip books from it. Does anybody out there remember Tiger?
No.
Tiger was a...
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Well, that's terrible. You're just pathetic. Tiger ran until 1995, I believe, or 85. It ran from the 60s through the 80s or 90s. And it was a simple little neighborhood kids comic strip, not unlike several other ones out there. Tiger was they were grade school age, like maybe 3rd or 4th grade. Tiger was your average kid next door, always had his baseball cap on so that it was covering his eyes, always had a sweatshirt on, usually with the letter A, and he hung out with his brother Pumpkinhead. We never did find out his real name. His best friend Hugo, who had one tooth and a flat top haircut, and several girlfriends, Susie, and a few other ones. I still think Susie grew up to be Janice from Arlo and Janice. It was a funny strip. It was just average kid stuff. Pumpkinhead was a little weird because he always went around in an oversized shirt and tie with long sleeves. Mm-hmm. And he was supposed to be like 2 or 3 years younger than Tiger. I always thought the strip was funny. I always thought they should have made it a cartoon. They actually did get into cartoon form, I think, in 1 or 2 specials that were part of like a giant, like a comic strip retrospective type thing. Mm-hmm. Like Archie's, I know Archie did one, and there was one called the Sunday Funnies that was a pilot that featured Garfield for the first time with this really weird voice that later, a couple years later, with Lorenzo Music would start doing it and it would take off. But Tiger was featured in one of those too. It isn't around anymore, and it's very hard to find, so you may have to go and find it on online, find information about it. But the Wikipedia page wrote it up quite well. My number 10, the defunct comic strip called Tiger.
Okay. My number 10 is the first strip of 2 strips done by the same artist. My number 10 is a strip called Leo. Or Leo. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it. It's Lio with a little flat accent mark over the O. It's a strip done by an artist named Mark Tutuli. It's a very different sort of strip in the fact that there's hardly ever any dialogue.
I have never heard of this strip.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Leo is a little boy who lives with his father. It's been established his mother is deceased, but we don't know the circumstances of which. Leo is a very odd child. Very odd. And when I say odd, I don't mean eating paste odd. I mean hanging out with the Grim Reaper odd. One of his best friends is a giant squid named Ishmael. He is...
Call me Ishmael.
Yeah, you can call me
course,
maybe. I don't know. It's very, very strange. And, of course, because it is strange and odd and more than a little twisted and weird, I love it.
Yeah, of course you
do. I love the idea that you have this kid who, you know, I mean, if he has a bully at school, he doesn't have to worry about him for very long because something unpleasant may happen to them. They might meet up with Ishmael. Or any of the other characters in the strip, like Fido, who is a spider that helps Leo cheat on tests. Or Mittens, a lobster that he rescued that was going to be his dad's dinner. Because you're going to name a lobster Mittens, because why not?
Well, its claws look like mittens.
I guess.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That's a scary thing to say and admit, isn't it?
It's a really funny strip. It's weird. I mean, there are a couple of times where you read it and you laugh, but it's that nervous kind of I'm glad he's not my kid kind of laugh. I just like it. It's one of those strips, it'll stick with you. You know, you may not get the joke right away. Like 10 minutes later you go, oh, wait a minute, what? But it's funny and quirky and I love it. My number 10, Leo.
I'll have to check that out. I don't even know what that is. My number 9 is the most recent of all the strips on my list. It is a strip that Kim turned me on to. And I don't read it every day, but she makes a point to bring it to my attention at least once a week.
I do.
And it's funny as hell. There have been certain ones that I've snickered over for a while because it's so pop culture oriented. And there have been other ones where I have laughed long and hard, like the one I have on my wall at work. My number 9 is That a Baby. Who is the author of that?
That a Baby.
I know it's coming up on her list. She loves it.
Is created and drawn by Paul Trapp.
Paul Trapp. This is 2 parents and a baby. That's basically the whole strip.
Yeah.
And they're always making comments. My favorite of all of the strips was one that came out about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, where does the baby have a name?
No, he's just called That a Baby.
That a Baby.
When the parents refer to him, he's just the baby.
The baby. When the baby is sitting in a room and he's holding a giant balloon. And then in the next panel, the balloon's a little bit lower, a little bit smaller. And then next panel, the balloon's a little bit lower and a little bit smaller. And the thought bubble from the baby reads, I blame Tom Brady. That's funny. I'm sorry. That was hilarious to me. I rolled on the floor. I have it on my wall at work. It's because you don't diss with Brady up here. I mean, I'm not a big football fan, but Brady's cool. That's all there is to it. But that was funny, and if there was any way to take a skewer at Goodell, that was the way to do it. It always has outlandishly funny puns, pop culture references. The parents are a little bit weird too.
Yeah.
But the baby's gonna grow up to be scary.
Yay!
My number 9, that a baby.
Okay. My number 9 is actually connected to my number 10, as in the fact that it's done by the same person. We're back to the fevered brain of Mark Tatuli again. For number 9, Heart of the City.
I don't know that one either.
Heart of the City is about a young girl named Hart Lamar. She lives with her mom in Philadelphia. Her mother is a single parent, and she has her hands full when it comes to Hart. Hart is very precocious, and she's a smart kid, but she sometimes gets a little bit... she's a little hard to take sometimes, because she's very much of the opinion that the spotlight should always be on her. She's obsessed with the idea of becoming a famous film star someday.
Oh boy,
you know,
I should check
one
this
of
one out
those
too.
kind of things. She's your typical little kid, though. She has her own, you know, she has hopes and dreams, and she wants to do everything all at once, you know, with that exuberance and energy that little kids have. That, boy, some of us wish we had that energy now.
Right.
I love all the supporting characters in Heart of the City, which really makes it as a great strip for me. I like Mrs. Angelini, who is a lady that lives in the same apartment building. She's an older lady, and she's often babysitting Hart because her mother, whose name is Addie, has to work. Mrs. Angelini is a very nice lady. She's, you know, just your kind of typical sweet Italian nanny type, and she's really nice. I like her a lot. But my favorite character in Heart of the City is Hart's best friend, Dean. Dean also is in her class.
There's a shock.
No, it's not just because his name is Dean.
It has a lot to do with it,
no,
though.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Okay, sure
actually,
it doesn't.
No, actually it doesn't. Look, I can separate Supernatural from the rest of my life.
Since when?
Don't be flip. The reason
Can I be flop?
You can be on the floor in a second. The reason I like Dean so much is, A, his cat is named Spock. So instantly, that makes him an awesome kid. Dean is a complete geek. Dean is into Star Trek. Dean is into Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Marvel Comics, DC Comics.
Oh, grand.
Anything. I'm like, oh my gosh, when did I have a baby and didn't realize it? I'm like, this is my child. This is my child in ink. And he's so fanciful and really cracks me up. I mean, I consider him the co-star of the strip as opposed to a supporting character. I mean, most of the stuff that happens is about Hart, you know, and it's not that she's an annoying child, because she's not. She's got a good, obvious joke coming up, heart, but sometimes she can be a little bit overabundant, overexuberant, but when you're that age, everything's new and exciting and has to get done right now. So, my number 9, Heart of the City.
Okay.
Okay?
Never heard of that one either. Is that in the paper?
Yeah, I read it online.
But is it on the papers? Do we know?
Yes, it is. I think the Herald carries it up here.
Okay.
Maybe the Globe, I'm not sure.
My number 8 was one of those revelations that when you first see it, and it's not a strip, it's a panel. When you first see it, and you look at the comic, and you read the caption, and you look at the picture, and realize, Daddy, you're back from Peru! If
you get that joke,
it's a scary thought to think that you are the child of one of the most demented comic artists in history. You never know. Well, I think he's the same age as me, so I don't think.
Well, you were, you know.
He's a little older. But the demented mind of Gary Larson is always scary, and number 8 on my list is The Far Side. That was one of the funniest things I've ever read, ever. And I wish he was still doing them. I felt bad that he's not doing them anymore.
Yeah.
Because he's just, I mean, I understand it, you know, he got tired of it and decided to retire it and everything. But sometimes you need a little Far Side in your life, and thankfully there's books, there's calendars, there's desk calendar, there's Far Side everything out there still. And I mean, the one that still sticks out in my mind is the one that we talk about all the time. What you're saying to a dog. Bad dog, Ginger. You're terrible, Ginger. Why did you tear up the floor, Ginger? Blah, 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 blah. What the dog hears. Blah, 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 Ginger. Blah, 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 Ginger. Blah, 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 Ginger. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's right. And it's
totally
funny
accurate.
as hell. That one and the poor boy pushing on a door that's marked pull.
At a school for the gifted.
Yeah.
The intellectually gifted.
Yeah. I'm like, oh. The Far Side never failed to completely convulse me. And it's if this generation is being deprived of it. So it needs to be, I don't, is it still is it re-syndicated? Are they rerunning them?
I'm not sure.
Because if it isn't, they need to. Number 8, Gary Larson's demented panel comic, The Far Side.
Okay. Number 8 on my list is a comic that's been around. Talk about staying power. This comic debuted on March 17th, 1985, and it's still going strong now. My number 8 comic is called Luann. It's authored by Greg and Karen Evans. You don't like Luann?
I've never been a huge fan. It's cute, but I've never been a huge fan of it.
Luann is the story of the life of Luann de Groot and her parents and her friends and her brother and people around her. And we've been following Luann's story and the people in her life since she was in high school, and now she's in college. And a lot of the Luann strips deal with funny situations and, all kinds of wacky happenings. But they've gotten into some very serious subjects. They've gotten into subjects like, drug abuse, domestic violence, and not only domestic violence between, older, boyfriend, girlfriend, but even on, a high school level. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of this stuff starts. And, dealing with all kinds of other serious issues. One of them being the fact that Luann's brother, Brad, for a long time in the strip, he was her antagonist because he's the older brother, and so they were kind of teasing all the time back and forth, and he was your stereotypical lazy older brother. But because of 9/11, Brad was encouraged to do something with his life and wound up becoming a firefighter. And it really changed him as a character. And he became a person that I think Luann is proud to call her brother now,
right.
And he's married now, and and we see all kinds of other things going on with her other friends, and it's really turned into a strip that you're kind of like, wow, you change along with these characters, because there's one character for the longest time that I really hated. I mean, hated this character. And they've been doing something lately with the writing that I'm like, damn. This girl's been going through a lot of stuff, and maybe that explains why she's always been the way she is, and wow, I feel bad for her.
You're psychoanalyzing a comic strip, you realize.
Yeah, but
I
was like, wow, I feel bad for her. Holy crap, I developed compassion for this character. That's saying something. I really think that means something important, and or maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. My number 8, like I said, Luann.
Okay.
Lots of fun.
My number 7, I'm going to need help with the author again because I can't remember her last name. Number 7 is one of the most unique strips to ever run in America and in Canada where it's set. It was, I think it debuted in the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. It may have been slightly earlier than that. And ran until the early part of the 20th century when she retired. 21st century. It is one of those kind of strips that will make you laugh, make you cry, and it's one of the very few strips out there where the characters have started young and grown up with the strip. It didn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. In other words, it worked in almost real time.
Almost, yeah.
And it was magnificent. My number 7 is For Better or Worse from Lynn
Lynn Johnston.
Lynn Johnston.
And the
I couldn't remember her last name.
I do that too. The title is actually For Better or For Worse.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was just For Better or Worse, but that's okay.
And it debuted in 1979.
Oh, so it was late 70s, extremely late 70s. And it ran till 2006,
2008.
Because obviously it's on your list, too.
Actually, no, it isn't.
It's not?
No, it's not, surprisingly enough.
Wow. The story of the family in this of this strip is always...
The Patterson
family. The mother and father and of course the kids. And even the most heartless adult, the most Vulcan adult, can remember crying during Remembering Farley, which happened in the late 90s, right?
I think... Let me check on that real fast.
She actually told a story about doing that in the store when she was reading it one time.
Farley the sheepdog was a member of the family, and he drowned.
Saving April, the daughter.
He did. And they made a book about it called Remembering Farley. And I was in a Barnes & Noble sitting there, tears pouring down my face.
It's one of those strips that touches you in many ways that you don't expect to. Had real stories. What was the mom's name, Len?
Pardon me?
The mom's name?
In the strip?
Yeah. I've forgotten and I didn't write it down. And I can't look stuff up because Kim can see where I'm looking up and she's not supposed to be able to see stuff.
I'm sorry. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah. I lost it. The mom's name was Ellie.
Ellie's brother passed away of cancer at some point during the strip, did he not?
I'm not sure. I don't remember that. I'm sorry.
I do. It was in a later thing. I might be wrong. It might have been another dread disease, but I remember he got very sick, and they dealt with that too. It's a very serious comic, but it still has a lot of humor in it, and the entire strip is available in book form.
Yeah.
So if you've never seen it, try it out. For Better or Worse, number 7 on my list.
Yep. Number 7 on my list is not around anymore. But there was a point when you could not get away from it. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but there were posters, there were T-shirts, there were stuffies, there were, specifically of 2 characters, there were stuffies. One was a flightless bird, and the other one was a cat that if I actually had seen a cat that looked like this, I would have taken it to the vet and had it put down.
Does it look like a drowned rat all the time?
My number 7 is Bloom County. A really surreal strip done by a gentleman named Berkeley Breathed. I never figured out how you say his name.
I always thought it was Breathed. I might be wrong.
I'm not sure.
It didn't make my list. I did like it, but it didn't make my list.
Bloom County actually did get a revival in 2015. I'm not sure if it's still running now, but it ran originally from 1980 to 1989. It started off... It was
replaced by Outland, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was replaced by Outland, which was just a little too out of the box for me.
You only liked that because Opus always liked playing Star Trek.
No, I liked it because I thought it was a good strip. I thought it was funny. I thought it could be poignant.
And the one TV special they did was awesome.
I thought they had a really good message in a lot of the strips. Mm-hmm. It started mostly dealing with this boarding house run by an older couple and their grandson Milo. And it kind of grew more into being about Milo and his friends and all of the people around the town and stuff like that. And that's when I really got into it. I had a couple of the books, and one of their friends was a gentleman named Cutter John, who had was a Vietnam veteran and wound up in a wheelchair because of his time in Vietnam. And the animals who could talk in this strip, and apparently that didn't concern anybody, would climb on his wheelchair with him, and they would play Star Trek. He would actually be the Enterprise, and they'd be zipping around, and it was funny. I mean, I thought it was screamingly funny. I remember one strip specifically that I was like, damn. It was a strip that ran after the miniseries The Day After ran on ABC. And it was a strip of one of the characters watching the end of that very deep film, turning the TV off, going outside and going to this dandelion field that they go to, and just being relieved that it was still there. Mm-hmm. And I just remember reading that and being like, damn. Uh-huh. You know, like I said, it could be funny, it could be poignant, it could be downright weird, and sometimes it was absolutely scathingly condemning of the politics of the time. It
was a very politically oriented strip.
Yeah, it was. In some ways, and those could be funny too. But they also went after entertainers, and
they did.
You know, anything that Mr. Breathed could get his hands on, or his ink brush around, whatever. Nothing was really safe, and that was made it so fun. My number 7, Bloom County.
My number 6 is one of those strips that if you're a fan, you like it. If you're not a fan, you don't really care about it. It's just kind of there. You read it, but it doesn't attach itself. I always thought it would have made a great sitcom, animated sitcom on TV, because I just really enjoyed the characters. Now, this is one of those strips where everything around them ages, but the characters never change. It brings in pop culture references from every decade since it started. My number 6 is Sally Forth, featuring housewife Sally Forth, her husband Ted, their daughter Hillary, and the continuing supporting character group. It's just your average small family thing. A lot of the best strips focus on Hillary, who is 6th, 7th grade and trying to fit in with her friends and coming up with these. Another thing that's always amused me about Sally Forth, they had a running gag for many, many years. Sally always ate the ears off of Hillary's Easter bunny. And she would do that before she gave him the bunny.
That's the best part.
What kind of a sicko are you? Honestly.
Look, at least it's a chocolate bunny. Calm down.
Okay, fair enough. I always thought this strip was a riot, and it would have made a great sitcom in the early days of The Simpsons, and those when they were trying everything they could to come up with an animated hit that this Fox had The Simpsons, and no other network could find anything. And you notice all of the animated hits are still on Fox, and nobody else can find anything. It's always fun, and it's a great little strip. And they are, like I said, moving forward with the times. When Hillary started, if I remember right, she was a big Duran Duran fan, and then later on she was a Justin Bieber fan, and so on and so forth. It moves with the times without aging the characters, and the artwork has changed from time to time as the artist has shifted. And sometimes I stopped reading it for about 6 weeks when they first changed the artwork. I didn't like the new guy. Mm-hmm. And then they went back and it was fine. But now you can go back and see it, and it's all fine. Number 6, Sally Forth.
Okay. I can't believe that this one was so low on your list, to be honest with you. My next choice. Mm-hmm. My number 6 is The Far Side.
Oh.
Gary Larson, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy.
Oh, come on, he's not Gary Waterston, for Pete's sake.
I'm sorry. This guy is completely and utterly insane. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, bless your heart, sir.
I'm sorry, that should have been Bill Waterston. I'm sorry, that's why I said Gary, because you said Gary. So, sorry. We're getting to that, I'm sure both of us are.
I know. There are so many, I mean so many Far Side panels that are just unbelievably hilarious. The one of the ones that I love there's some of them that are just, they've got, Gary got in trouble for some of them. I mean, because they're funny, but they're also like, oh my God, we went there. One of them is a panel that is a playpen with what looks to be a boa constrictor in it, and he can't get out of the playpen because there is a pretty large bulge in the middle, so he can't.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And I'm sorry.
He got in deep doo-doo for that one.
God, we went there, did we, Gary? Okay, yeah, that one was pretty crazy.
Someone ate the baby.
One of the ones that I think is hysterically funny, and actually he also got in trouble for.
What a shock! He got in trouble, and you think it's hysterically funny. There you go.
Well, he got in trouble with people that pick nits. It's a panel that's got a bunch of penguins on it. They're sitting on an ice floe, and right in the middle of the penguins is a polar bear. And the polar bear has a little beak. He's disguising himself with a little beak, and the one of the penguins is talking to one of the other penguins, and says something to the effect, "And now Ted's gone. I'm telling you, something weird is going on around here."
Yeah, I remember that
or
one
something
too.
like that. Now that's hilarious. That is hysterical, but people couldn't leave that alone. He actually got letters from people telling him that penguins don't live in the same place where polar bears live. Polar bears live at the North Pole, and penguins all live in where the South Pole is. Shut up! It's a comic strip. It's hysterical. Shut up!
Well, it's not like it was the spider huggers attacking him.
I know, but I'm
Coming
sorry.
up on that, too.
That is unbelievable. I thought that was hilarious, and for some reason, just the fact that people actually had to call him out on it. You know, you just picture these people adjusting their little suspenders and their bow ties and getting just so upset that they have to write something, they have to complain about this.
Sounds like something Sheldon would do.
And it just, oh my gosh, we decided to go there, did we?
Hate that show.
I know.
Anyway.
I mean, what can you say about a strip that is drawn by someone that is so wacky and so out there that he actually got a bug named after him? I mean, you're that strange that somebody names a bug after you. There is actually a bug, and I'm going to screw this up, and I know I am. It's called a streaky, I told you, Strigophilus Gary Larsoni.
Uh-huh.
It is a type of louse that is,
how apropos.
sorry, that only exists on owls. Mm-hmm. And when it was discovered, it was named after Gary Larson.
I don't think that doctor liked The Far Side very well.
Well, no, I don't know. I get the feeling. No, they actually said that they did it because the doctor that found out about this bug praised him for, quote, "the enormous contribution that my colleagues and I feel you have made to biology through your cartoons," end quote. So that's pretty awesome.
Biology?
Well, he's always...
I know, it's, I like, okay,
well, he was
whatever.
always showing amoebas and science stuff
and
all
he
that
was.
kind of stuff, and that's awesome. So, Mr. Larson, hey, you got a bug named after you, dude. That's way cool. And now you got a couple of nuts that think your strip is great, so yay. So, mine number 6, The Far Side.
There was a great interview with him and Barbara Walters at one point. You might look around and see if it's probably on the internet, because he's so normal when you're talking to him. He really is. It was a great interview. My number 5...
You sound so disappointed.
No. Well, not really. My number 5 starts the big 5. I mean, These other 5 were great, but these 5 are probably on her list too in some order, and I'm like, okay, we're going to have an interesting time. Mm-hmm. Number 1, as with all 5 of these, never fails to convulse me. Number 2, it is, I think, possibly the most accurate representation of an average American family in the history of comics. Even though, again, it goes through that whole, the years change, the characters never age. You know, Mom and dad are the same, oldest son is still 16, middle child is 14, young child is 10. That has not changed all the way through. The jokes change, but, you know, the times change, the jokes change, but the humor never changes from the brilliantly awesome Foxtrot. They're not doing weekly strips and haven't been for a while. They're still only weekend strips. Mm-hmm. But even when they had the weekly ones... Just Sundays.
Yeah.
And it's like when it was a weekly, and I mean, it's fine still, even though it's still only once a week. The story of the Fox family... there's Andy, the mother. What's the dad's name? Roger. I always forget. And of course, eldest dipstick son Peter, middle daughter Paige, and the inimitable wannabe Sheldon, Jason Fox.
Don't insult Jason like that.
I know. In their continuing adventures, Roger's always causing the computer to delete itself. Andy tries to keep the whole house together. Peter, whose girlfriend Denise is blind, knows how to put him in his place. Otherwise, he's an obsessed 16-year-old. Paige is 14, obsessed with shopping, can't cook, and tries to speak, and boys, and tries often to speak in French, which Kim also has picked up here and there, particularly the whole Quelle Surprise thing.
Well, it's because she has an imaginary boyfriend named Pierre.
Yeah, she does. And Jason and his best buddy Marcus, they do Star Trek. As time goes on, they've done all kinds of, Jason's obsessed with pretty much everything a science fiction, fantasy, horror fan can be obsessed with. The strips are hysterically funny. Jason scares me sometimes. And there is one particular strip out of all the ones that they've ever done that continues to be my all-time favorite strip. It came out in 2002. It was before they ended the dailies. And the scene is from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where Herbie, the elf, is talking to
his boss.
And you're not supposed to want to be a dentist. You're supposed to be an elf. And then he's like, okay, now, I need you to go to Rivendell. Elrond's put together a council. And he's like, can my friends come? And Rudolph and his girlfriend are standing there. And then the last panel, Rudolph's Lord of the Rings Christmas will return in a moment. And Peter yelling at Jason, hey, Jason, they used your idea. Oh, my God, I busted a gut. I'm like, this is so what Jason would do. Rudolph and Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. It is hilarious. Everything they ever did was hilarious. Who's the author?
Bill Amend.
Thank you. I knew I'd forget it. Mr. Amend, I have loved your stuff for going on 30 years, and I always will. It's just, it's just priceless, and I'm sure you'll be talking about it more in the future. My number 5, Foxtrot.
Okay. Number 4 on my list, number 5. Number 5 on my list. Is on your list. I'm sure it is. It is a wonderful cartoon. It's funny. It can be charming. It can be sweet. It can just melt your heart. I don't care who you are. My number 5, Rose's Rose.
My number 4 is Rose's Rose.
Written by Pat Brady and drawn since 2004 by Don Wimmer. Rose's Rose, for the most part, tells the story of the Gumbo family, although we do see the extended Gumbo family. We see mom and sister and stuff like that as the years go on, and friends. The Gumbo family consists of Mom Rose, Dad Jimbo, and Pasquale, their son. Now, for the longest time, Pasquale spoke in what was referred to as Pasquale speak, which is, the way a child talks when they're
phonetic speech.
Where you have to kind of say, see, you're reading it and you're like, read, pause, stare some more, say it out loud. Oh, that's what he's saying. And that went on for a long time in the strip.
Not a terribly long time, only about 4 years. And then they aged him up where he could actually talk.
They have aged him up to where he speaks a lot more clearly.
Yeah.
They have Mimi still speaking Pasquale.
Mimi spoke only in Peeps until Pasquale graduated to regular speak, and then they gave him the phonetic
Mimi
speech.
lives
Mimi's
next door.
Neighbor's kid.
Mimi is the little girl next door who lives with her dad Corky and her mom Abby. And there's other supporting characters like Rose's mom, who drives a motorcycle sometimes in an RV sometimes and is just awesome.
And Clem.
And there's her sister.
And Clem.
And Clem, all right? Her sister, Fanny.
Well, Clem would be wanting all the attention right now. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, but I'm talking. So that's it. We put our foot down like Godzilla on Bambi. Stomp.
Since when, anyway?
Fanny is Rose's sister, and Fanny has a son named Clem, who is
the biggest brat ever written for a comic strip. And oh my God, he's hysterical.
Yeah. He's an attention hog. He's a sweets hog. He's just a hog. So is his mother. When Rose tried to teach him a lesson by putting his picture in the dictionary and showing it to him as the definition of hog, thinking that would shame him, he was like, cool. So apparently...
Can I get this frame, please?
Yeah. Didn't work. One of the other characters in this, there's a lot of imagination in this strip, a lot of whimsy, and a lot of other really sweet things. There's also Peekaboo the cat, who is just a flippin' riot.
Peekaboo is quite possibly the most surreal animal ever in the comic strips, and that's saying a lot considering Snoopy and Garfield are up there. She's just
one
out
of the
there.
other characters that cracks me up all the time, and also makes me go, wow, that's really cool, is Pasquale's guardian angel. Pasquale's guardian angel, for the most part, usually looks like Pasquale.
When there's danger around.
Except he's got wings and a halo. Until something is threatening, like a thunderstorm or the monster in the drain or something like that. And then he's like 100 feet tall warrior.
Sword at the ready.
Yeah, 100 feet tall warrior with a sword and I am the wrath of God kind of thing. And
this is one of the reasons why it's number 4 on my list, is because I really love the fantasy elements of this. It's a straightforward comic, but it has wonderful fantasy elements like Pasquale's love for his 3D comics, where he frequently goes on adventures while he's asleep in his little dream ship. The guardian angel is always hysterical. I mean, there's always something. And then we get to occasionally hear Peekaboo's inner thoughts, which are really terrifying.
We also get the fact that Mom Rose has different facets to her personality that materialize. She actually physically changes in the comic from meek housewife Rose to boisterous Vicky the biker.
We see her change. She doesn't really change. We see the change.
We see the change. She becomes
Vicky the biker chick.
Vicky the biker. She's also got Prudence the Amish.
Oh, I forgot about Prudence.
Housewife.
That's right. Yeah.
And a very long time ago, Jimbo had his own side personality, Laylo
the monk. Yeah.
It is a really great strip. I absolutely love it. My number 5, Rose's Rose.
Do you have a particular strip from them that was really fun? It's my number 4, so we'll just keep talking about it for a minute. Clem is a riot. Clem is the biggest brat, and yet him and Pasquale, however you want to say it, are close friends, and they are cousins, and they do play together all the time. Because Fanny lives nearby. There are 2 strips that immediately come to mind, which is they are coming out. They've been to some big building. Rose and Pasquale. This is right after he started speaking regular speech, and they're in an elevator with a bunch of adults. He's the only kid in the elevator. And he comes out, and they're walking down the street, and she's like, "What did you think? Did you enjoy the trip?" He's like, "It's like a tiny church filled with librarians," because nobody was saying a word.
Yeah, elevator etiquette.
Yeah,
little kids don't understand elevator etiquette.
That was funny as hell. The other one is, and this is mean, but it's funny. Clem and Pasquale commenting on Rose as she moans about having a double chin. And then a triple chin. And Clem, trying to be helpful, says, "Oh, hey, can we run a slinky down it?" I busted a gut. It's one of the funniest strips I've ever seen. It's mean as hell. And it's not really there. It's Rose imagining that because her mother's a large woman, and Jimbo likes large women.
Yeah.
But he continually tries to get her to gain a few pounds.
Yeah,
and it's a hilariously funny strip with some really good stuff. I've never seen them be overly serious, although they can get parent preachy. Like the time Pasquale wanted a popsicle before dinner, and Jim is like, Jimbo was like, popsicles before dinner is stupid. Are you stupid? And Pasquale almost started crying. He's like, "Oh, wait a minute. That was a bad thing to say." Grabbed the popsicle, gave it to Pasquale. Personal foul.
Yeah, but he acknowledged that he did something wrong.
Yeah, he did. That's the thing I like about that, too, is the parents are not infallible, and they know it.
Yeah, they know they're not perfect.
And, of course, Mima and her RV is hilarious, which is Rose's mom.
Yeah.
I could talk forever about Rose's Rose. I love it. Number 4, Rose's Rose from Pat Brady.
That's awesome. Okay, so my number 3...
Number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I did it again. Sorry. It's dark over on this corner. My number 4, you've already mentioned, That a Baby.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I knew you liked it, but I didn't think it was that high.
Oh my gosh, I love this strip. Paul Trapp has come up with this incredibly, hysterically funny and sometimes bitingly funny strip. The thing about That a Baby that I like so much is the fact that he goes after everybody, but not in a mean way.
No, well, not really.
He deals with the fact that it's very obvious that certain restaurants and certain fast food places, whom I won't mention because lawyers,
lawyers? What are you afraid of lawyers for?
I'm not afraid of much. I'm afraid of lawyers. That certain fast food restaurants market stuff deliberately to kids, and certain, cereals and things are deliberately marketed so that kids will scream their parents' ears down to get them. And he brings that up, but not in a mean way and not in a beating you over the head with it way. I love the fact that both parents are Star Trek nerds. The dad a little more. But that's how they met, was the fact that he made a Star Trek quote, talked about a very minor Star Wars character, and the mom knew who it was.
Oh, you said Star Trek.
I'm sorry. They are Star Trek.
Oh, damn. You got me all excited.
No, they are Star Trek fans, but they're also Star Wars fans.
Warsies.
Don't poke that tauntaun.
Poke.
That's not a good idea. You enjoy the couch tonight. Anyway, but one thing that I really like about That a Baby is the fact that they've done some really nice tributes for people that have passed on that are important people to geek culture. And they're usually done by the baby, who we just know as the baby, drawing something on the wall in crayon or ketchup or whatever.
Right.
For, artists and, comic book people, actors, who are really important to geek culture.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really cool. I would like to know one thing about the baby, though, that really confuses me. I know that that all the science nerd people are like, oh, babies can hear music in utero, blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, I suppose that's possible. But there's a running gag in the strip where the baby wakes his parents up at night, and he's crying like a baby cries, but he's actually singing lyrics to songs. And I'm like, how does a baby know the lyrics to a Ramones song? What the hell? I get confused.
Let me guess. I want to be sedated.
I don't remember which one they used, but they've used a few. They've used a few, and I'm like, my brain hurts.
I missed that one. Now I have to go back and find that.
My brain hurts now. Number 4, That a Baby.
Yeah, it's the best of all the newer strips, I think.
I think it's one of the best,
It's funny as hell from beginning to end. My number 3, again, this is my greats here. My number 3 debuted in the summer of 1978 and has never looked back in his opinions, his disdain for certain people, or his love for lasagna. My number 3, Garfield from Jim Davis. Now, some people these days think Garfield is now passé. To that end, they have come up with a strip called Garfield minus Garfield, which is mostly focused on John, with Garfield removed.
Yeah.
It's a website. Jim Davis has approved of it. He thinks it's hysterical. But to me, Garfield is just quintessentially the funniest cat ever to hit comics, with the possible exception, as I said, of Peekaboo. I really like... and Peekaboo and her obsession with minty breath, too. That was something. Garfield's humor has always appealed to me. The cartoons on television, especially the original show, Garfield and Friends, which unfortunately shifted U.S. Acres in there, too, and I was never a big fan of that strip, another Jim Davis strip, is great. Lorenzo Music did the voices for the special... the original special, Here Comes Garfield, way back in the early 80s, and he continued to do it for the weekly show. And it was a marvelous show, and it's funny as heck. But the strip itself is so classic, especially the first 4 or 5 years when Lyman was still around, number one. Lyman was originally Odie's owner, and then he kind of went away. Garfield is always full of observations about people around him, whether it be John, Odie, Nermal, John's mom and dad, and his brother Doc Boy. Doc Boy never fails to completely convulse me. It's and I don't understand how a cat could be obsessed with lasagna anyway, because it's not good for them. They shouldn't be eating that.
No.
But John's such a nerd. I didn't like the live action movies. I haven't liked the new CGI stuff either. But the original show and the original strip, I will never forget one of the original strips in the very first book. Garfield is sitting there, and you can tell he's cleaning himself. Now, at the time, Garfield was much bigger than he actually ended up being within a year. Jim shrunk him down. He was huge, and he was cleaning himself. When he got done cleaning himself, he was this beautiful, prim and proper, smiling, blinking, long, bushy eyebrow cat with this great big smile on it, and John looks down at him and says, "I don't care how beautiful you make yourself, you still can't have more lasagna." I about busted a gut laughing, because watching him get all gussied up just to try and schmooze John was funny as hell. I have always just liked the subtle humor. And more than anything about Garfield, I love the fact that Garfield hates spiders. The spider huggers out there have jumped on Jim Davis every time Garfield smashes a spider. And I'm like, why? They're funny. I mean, and sometimes he's even had conversations with the spiders before smushing them.
Before he smushes them.
They're hilarious. And I wish more people respected it now. People don't respect it like that. I mean, when it first came out, it was merchandised everywhere. I had like 30 posters of Garfield that I never put up anywhere. I don't know what happened to them. I spent a whole paycheck on them once. And little statuettes and stuff. I was a Garfield fanatic. And I still love the strip very much, and I wish people would pay more respect to it. And he's got some of the best music from his specials out there. So check those out. Number 3, Garfield.
Okay.
And the only comic character I can actually draw, by the way. I can't even do Snoopy.
Number 4 on my list. I did that. Sorry. Number 3 on my list. Like I said, it's dark back here. Number 3 on my list, you've already mentioned. Brilliant strip. It is a shame that it's only down to once a week, but,
It is.
It is what it is, and life goes on. My number 3, Foxtrot. Bill Amend is hysterical. The thing I love the most about Foxtrot is the fact that the parents aren't perfect. They're not stupid. They're not like
I don't know. Roger's pretty thick. He's not Peter Griffin thick, but he's pretty thick.
No, Peter Griffin is thick and mean.
That
show is just mean.
Yeah. It is funny at times, though.
But Roger is a good provider for his family. He's just... Occasionally, he does dumb stuff. And he does think that he's better at chess than he is, because he's really not.
No, he's not.
Andrea, or Andy as she's known, she's a hard-working mom, but she also can be a little bit wearing when it comes to the fact that she is, one of these people you can't turn the thermostat up, even if it's 20 degrees below nothing out. And
This is why Peter always has sweaters on.
And I understand she's trying to get her family to eat healthy when she's giving them, like, tofu dogs or anything, all this disgusting, revolting crap. But, and that's a parent thing, and I know some people will probably be like, well, you don't understand, blah, blah, blah. But I love the pop culture references, and I love the fact that Jason is who he is. I love the fact that Jason is, this incredibly nerd, geeky kid who is probably the smartest kid in the house. Possibly
Well, this is a kid who does all of his homework for the year on the first day of school.
Yeah.
And it also would be said, we've had this discussion quite often. We have often discussed the fact that if we did have a child, which we do not, our child would be half Jason Fox and half Pasquale Gumbo.
No, see, that's the thing. No, I don't think so. See, my thing is, I think that I would like our child to be a sweet child like Pasquale. I'm afraid if we had a child, we would have a child that would be half Jason Fox and half Calvin. That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, Calvin's probably thrown in there, but I think Pasquale we have Pasquale qualities. We'd give him Pasquale qualities.
Anyway. The thing that I love about Foxtrot is the fact that sometimes one really good example of the whole geek culture thing is one of the titles of a book that came out in 2005, which I remember seeing in the bookstore, and I'm standing there giggling like a crazy person, and I probably made a bunch of people nervous. I don't care. It was a book called Orlando Bloom Has Ruined Everything.
Yeah. Didn't we buy that eventually?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
The title just had me laughing hilariously because the whole thing of that run of the strip was Marcus and Jason being so excited about the Lord of the Rings movie coming out, and Paige giving them a hard time about it until she clapped eyes on Orlando Bloom as Legolas, and being at the theater and trying to be a Tolkien fanboy and being surrounded by all of these Legolas lusters. I'd hate to think what they would have thought of Figwit. But I love this strip. It's hysterically funny. The year that Jason trimmed the Christmas tree to look like Sauron's tower with the Eye of Sauron at the top, I'm like, that's an interesting angel. It's hilariously funny. And sometimes it's also very sweet. There was a strip that they did back earlier on in the series where Jason opened all of his gifts before his siblings.
Yeah.
And when everybody else came downstairs, they're all opening their gifts and stuff like that. And Jason's really sad because he's missing out on doing this with his family.
Right.
And he's hugging his mom, and he says something like, "I wish I had waited." And she says, "I wish you did too, sweetie," or something like that. Mm-hmm. The next strip is her finding another gift for him. It was actually a gift for Roger. And Roger's like, "I thought that gift was for me." And she's like, "Somebody else needed it more." And I was just remember being like, oh, that's
I
something.
remember those, yeah.
That's something a parent does. And I have something in my eye. I'm sorry, someone's cutting onions in here. My number 3, Foxtrot.
My number 2 and my number 1 were really, really, really hard to decipher.
Were they hard to decide?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love both of them. They both have their own qualities, and I had to pick one, unlike her, as you'll see in a minute. I had to pick, I had to go with my gut. And it was very difficult because I love both of them in different ways. My number 2 is perhaps the funniest and most outrageously funny modern day comic to ever hit. It lasted for a brief 10 years, and there was an 18-month hiatus in the middle of that. And it is a really simple, true, sort of to life story about an average 6-year-old and his pet tiger. My number 2 is Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin is your average hyperactive, oversugared 6-year-old. His mom and dad are incredibly patient people to put up with him. His sidekick is his loyal best friend, a tiger named Hobbes, who is seen as real to everybody except the people in the strip who see Hobbes as what he really is, a stuffed animal. The humor in this is brilliantly funny. Again, it can be really touching, such as the whole story. What was the animal he found?
Baby raccoon.
A baby raccoon. Way back in the middle of the strip's run. Bill Watterson is a freaking genius. I mean, he really is. Mm-hmm. There's actually a documentary called Dear Mr. Watterson, which focuses on Calvin and Hobbes fans and how much they love the strip and how they try to keep their love for the strip going, even though it hasn't been around in new strips for over a decade now.
Yeah.
And passing their love on to the next generation. I will give Barnes & Noble credit. They did do a book called The Complete Calvin and Hobbes, which we still have not got.
No, I know.
And there's very few of them left, I'm sure. And
it's a coffee table book.
It was it's more than that. It's like 600, 800 pages. It's huge. And it's got every strip he ever did.
You could use it as a coffee table.
Well, yeah. There's just wonderful. I mean, Calvin is just he eats sugar-frosted cocoa
Chocolate
bombs.
Frosted sugar bombs. And it's horrible that it's horrifying. I remember that.
He and Hobbs love to go sledding in the wintertime, which is terrifying. And his best strips, I think, are perhaps The Adventures of Spaceman Spiff, which is this imaginary hero that Calvin pretends to be. His poor parents, I feel so sorry for them. And the little girl, Susie, who he really likes, even though he doesn't act like he likes, is really cute. Kim has actually shown me some fanfic set later in their lives where Calvin and Susie are a couple, and they're really funny and really sweet.
Yeah.
It is a brilliant, subversive, hysterical comic from beginning to end. This generation needs to make sure that Calvin and Hobbes continues on. Our generation needs to keep pushing the old books on a new group of kids.
Yeah.
Without a question. Number 2, Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay. Number 2 on my list is a strip and a character you've already mentioned. My number 2 is Garfield. Jim Davis is, like you mentioned, Garfield has kind of fallen out of favor over the last few years.
He has, and there's no reason. He's still funny as
hell. People
hell.
complain it's formulaic and blah, 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 and all this stuff like that, to which my response is, cram it, you hipsters. If you don't like it, go read something else. I love Garfield. I have always loved Garfield. I think it's one of the funniest damn strips ever.
Yeah.
And I think the spider bashing thing was hilarious. Now, I realize that spiders are important. If we didn't have spiders, we'd be up to our...
Spiders are important to society. We need them out there. You treat them very badly.
Yeah, I know. Blah, blah, blah. You know. I realize if we didn't have spiders, we'd be up to our armpits in bugs. Blah, blah, blah. I get it. But it's just funny to me. I'm sorry. The thing that I love about Garfield is the fact that he completely he is a cat. For all of the weird stuff that he does and all of the crazy adventures he gets in, at the end of the day, he's a cat.
He still eats birds.
In the fact, no, he does eat birds.
He has eaten birds,
He has eaten birds. But my point is that he is a cat in the fact that he does what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Cats do what they want. If you try and get a cat to do something they don't want to do, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly.
Walking really, on a leash with a coat.
You know, it's going to get ugly. And we hope we can count on you to help us count up the shows we've had this summer, and you'll go and check them all out.
Check out our Spotify playlist of all the songs this week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
You know what I think?
What?
I think Jim Davis and Simon Tofeld should get together for a miniseries. Simon's Cat meets Garfield. Oh my God, that would be a freaking riot.
I don't, and I think the universe would implode. That's a terrible idea. I mean, it's a great idea, but it's a terrible idea too. I just think it's hilariously funny. I've always thought it was a funny strip. I loved the whole thing where Garfield one Halloween decided that he was going to be, I don't know if it was a Halloween thing or it was just like him being weird. He took a pillow, a blanket, and draped it over himself, and he was Amoeba Man. And I just, for some reason...
I remember those. Those were great.
I don't know why that cracked me up so bad, but for some reason, I just love the idea of him just... He's just, like, galumphing along the floor with this blanket on him.
Amoeba Man was to the strip what Maru's boxes are to Maru.
And he, like, jumps on top of this sandwich and, like, absorbs it and then just keeps going. And I don't know why I sat there and just laughed my head off for like 10 minutes
those are
straight.
Great. Those are great strips. So are the ones with Pookie, which we forgot. I totally forgot to bring Pookie up.
Pookie is Garfield's teddy bear.
Teddy bear.
Because of course he is. You know. And it's just a funny... There's one strip that I really, really thought was hilarious. And it's not... Garfield's not the focus of it. Odie is. The point of the strip is Garfield sitting there watching Odie, who is chasing his tail. And he's chasing his tail, and he actually manages to catch his tail, and he catches just the tip of the tail between his teeth. The next thing we see, is him going straight up in the air, going yip, and Garfield looks out at the audience, dogs, and it's just...
I thought it was sad.
Oh, it might have been sad, yeah. And it's just so...
One of the things, just going back, because it was number 3 on my list, and I got to bring it up because I forgot it. One of the two funniest things I've ever seen Garfield do was there's one, he's sitting there, I'm down. Down, down, down. Down, doobie-doo, down, down. Like, oh, Neil Sedaka, your ears are burning somewhere.
Comma, down, doobie-doo, down, down. It's like, oh my god.
That one and one where he's hanging on the screen door. I'm bored. Bored. John comes out. Slam. I'm in pain. Pain. I love those two. Those two are just two of my favorite single strips of Garfield. Anyway, you're number 2.
My number 2, Garfield. There's not enough lasagna to say how much we love you, big guy.
So your number 1 is obviously a tie between my number 1 and my number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. My number 1 is just the greatest comic strip of all time. I mean, there's just no way. There's a lot of current successors. But when you have a comic strip that can keep up daily and weekend stuff with new ideas, new stuff going for 50 years, almost to the day, 50 years, that is an accomplishment that it's really hard to manage. Garfield is getting close. Mm-hmm. At this point. He's been 78, 88, 98, 2000. But he's almost 40. He'll be 40 next year. So that's something. But it's like you got a classic group of characters. You got classic situations. You got limited figures. No adults that really appear in the strip. And a pop culture phenomenon that can be everything from a World War I flying ace to Joe Cool to Joe Tennis Star, and it's a dog. Everything works, and always will work, for Charles Schulz's brilliant Peanuts. I'm not yet there. They've finished now with the books. I've got to finish getting the rest of my books. Hint, hint. Those were a Christmas present every year for the first 5 years. Classic Peanuts strips and the complete Peanuts strips. And some of them, the early ones, I'd never read. And just ended up in hysterics over because they're so... Again, this is a strip that moves forward in time. The characters never age. And they just have fun with it.
Well, no, they did age at the beginning.
They aged a little bit. They did age a little bit because Linus was born in the strip.
Right.
And Sally was born in the strip.
Right.
And Rerun was born in the strip. And now Linus and Sally are the same age, and they're only a year behind Lucy, Charlie Brown, Schroeder, and the rest of the characters. Mm-hmm. And Rerun is perpetually now 3 or 4. He's young. He's the younger version of Linus from the early days. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they haven't aged many characters at all. The story of Charlie Brown and his friends in whatever city it's supposed to be set in. Many people think it's Sebastopol, California, where Charles Schulz lived, although originally it was in Minnesota where he lived at the time. It is a brilliantly funny strip. It's poignant. There's some that, I mean, Schulz did week-long series, which mm-hmm. were, and sometimes even longer, and they were really brilliant, and I'm sure you'll hit on this too. But it's like, they did a whole thing timed to the moon landing, the first mm-hmm. moon landing in mm-hmm. 1969. He had, Snoopy going off to camp, or Charlie Brown going off to camp, and Mr. Shut Up and Leave Me Alone was Charlie Brown's campmate. Mm-hmm. You had all these great stuff. And then they made the jump to television and have been iconic in that way ever since.
Yeah.
A Charlie Brown Christmas is now 52 years into its run.
Oh, my gosh.
And Great Pumpkin celebrates its 50th year this month. Mm-hmm. It's going to be it's just crazy. The characters are still in everything on, in addition to the strips, they're on lunchboxes, they're on television commercials. They were the spokespeople for MetLife Insurance for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
They have done...
We got a big screen version,
The new Peanuts movie that came out a couple years ago, which I was sure was going to just tank, ended up being one of the best films of the year. Funny as hell. And it was very much a throwback to the TV cartoons. Mm-hmm. They are just universal and timeless, all at once. And I got to play Linus in a school play once, and that was fun. And they will just always be in my heart, not just because it's the comic strip I grew up with, but Snoopy is just so versatile. I mean, he's a World War I flying ace. He's Joe Cool. He's the tennis pro. He's the skating coach, Peppermint Patty's skating coach, dressed in his little Russian babushka top and fur coat.
Yeah.
Every character, I'd be hard pressed to pick a favorite character, but I think Marcy would probably be my favorite because she's just so able to just say things that you don't expect.
Right.
Sally is
very
another
practical.
And Sally is another one. You never know what goofy thing's going to come out of her mouth. But I love the strip. My all-time favorite comic strip by just a hair. Peanuts, Charles Schulz.
Okay. Well.
Am I right though?
Yes.
Okay.
You're apparently a far better person than me, but we knew that because
we don't know that, and just because you decided to cop out and tie them.
It wasn't a cop out. It was not a cop out. It's because I literally could not choose. I was literally sitting there going, I can't choose because I love both of these so much on very different levels.
Yeah.
My number one is a tie between Charles Schulz and his comic strip Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes, written by Bill Watterson.
You ever notice that those are two completely polarly opposite strips?
Again, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
On both of them.
We're not worthy. They are opposite, but in some ways, they're really not. Both strips,
in spirit, they're the same. They're similar. Yes.
Both strips focus on young kids. They focus on the power of imagination. They focus on close friendships. Linus and Charlie Brown are best friends.
Yeah.
And you've got Calvin, whose best friend is Hobbes. You know.
We should have thought of that.
What?
Oh, we should have had a Calvin and Hobbes crossover.
Huh?
They're all the same age. Calvin's the same age as them.
Yeah. There's fanfic about that too.
Couldn't he be like one in Sally's class?
No, seriously, there is Calvin and Hobbes crossed with Peanuts fanfic out there.
You're gonna have to dig some of that up for me. I want to see
There
that.
is also, I'm very sorry, I don't have the name of it right now. There is a fanfic out there I want to bring up real quick. There's a fanfic out there where Calvin is given Hobbes by one of the manifestations of the Doctor. And he keeps meeting...
that's a great story. I read that too.
He keeps meeting different incarnations of the Doctor. And it's
I wonder what he'd think of Jodie Whittaker's
Doctor.
Doctor.
My gosh, it's so good.
It is. It's a great story. I don't read fanfic very often, but that was great.
I am going to start with Peanuts because I literally grew up with this. Because it was part of my life because, spoiler alert, my dad's name was Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
That is not a joke.
No.
And when I was little,
Aren't you glad he didn't name either you or Joy Sally?
Yeah. I got that a lot, too. Oh, is your sister named Sally? No. And I just say it in that real deadpan, no. You know, back off or I'll punch you in the balls was implied. Although we did have a beagle. But her name was Queenie, not Snoopy.
Say it wasn't Snoopy. Go ahead.
But Charlie Brown and the gang of Peanuts, those were the first books I ever checked out of the library. Were the Peanuts, comic strip books that were all in volumes.
Yeah.
I owned a ton of them. And I just loved reading about these characters because they were funny. And I could identify with Charlie Brown. I felt bad for him. I was like, I'd be his friend. I'd totally be his friend. And it really amazes me because he always talks about how he doesn't have friends and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, don't you see that you do have friends? Linus is your bud. Linus is your buddy. And even though she can be a stone cold bitch,
even though
Lucy's
Linus is his
friend.
buddy, but even even Linus thinks Charlie Brown is the Charlie Browniest.
Yeah, he does. Well, he does. And because he is. I mean,
of all the Charlie Browns in the world, you're the Charlie Browniest.
Yeah. And
what the hell does that even mean? That's too existential for 5-year-olds.
Those cartoons, Charlie Brown Christmas, it's a Pumpkin Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. I grew up with those, and
a
that's
lot of them
so
that aren't
amazing,
on anymore that you can't get on video.
But that was when I was much younger and first learning about comics. Calvin and Hobbes came into my life in the late 80s when it began in the mid 80s. And then I found Calvin and Hobbes and I was like, okay, this is a new addiction. And I was perfectly honest with myself about that. I loved this strip. And there's so much about it that I loved. And I still quote this strip to this day.
Oh, yeah. We both do.
You mentioned the whole story arc with the baby raccoon, which made me cry.
I think that's the only time in the entire strip Calvin actually cried. Oh, no, the one time when he lost Hobbs. Those two were the only times I can remember. There were a few other
times he teared up, but he did cry.
He actually did cry with the baby raccoon.
Yeah, he finds a baby raccoon, and it's obviously ill when he finds it, and it doesn't make it. And this is the first time this 6-year-old child has dealt with the concept of death, which is a concept that people who are 96 have a hard time dealing with. Never mind a little kid trying to understand. And it's so sad. I mean, literally, I'm sitting there, tears pouring down my face. One of the ones that I love is it's a Sunday strip. The Sunday strips were often just one big panel. He did he did
all kinds of weird stuff with his Sunday stuff. Because he was the one that pushed it into new dimensions that the newspapers were having fits about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mr. Watterson.
Yes, thank you.
You're an amazing person, sir. You really are. And I call very few.
And by the way, just for the record, this Bill Watterson is not the same guy that directed the new cult film Dave Made a Maze.
No.
His name is the same, but it's not the same guy.
It's a Sunday strip of Calvin perched on top of a ladder. And he's standing on the ladder. He's standing with his back to a little child-sized swimming pool that's full of water. And it's very obvious he's going to do a backflip or a swanton or something. And Hobbs is on the ground yelling, "Better hurry, your mom's yelling something." And I love that strip. I just think that's hilariously funny. And I'm sorry, being a wrestling fan, I'm like, I wonder if Jeff Hardy ever saw that. When it was announced that Calvin and Hobbes was ending,
we cried.
I felt like a family member had died. I mean, I was like, they can't do this. No! It was an actual movie. No, it was terrible. But Calvin and Hobbes, I don't think is ever going to really go away. He is in the hearts of way too many people because we all either knew a kid like Calvin or we were a kid like Calvin.
Yeah.
So my number one is a tie between two strips that deal with the wonder and power of childhood in different ways, but also in the same. Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes.
Recapping, my top 10 were number 10, Tiger, number 9, That a Baby, number 8, The Far Side, number 7, For Better or For Worse, number 6, Sally Forth, number 5, Foxtrot, number 4, Rose's Rose, number 3, Garfield, number 2, Calvin and Hobbes, number 1, Peanuts. And let's just say right now, Foxtrot still is ripe for a TV show. Could you please do it, please? Somewhere out there. Somebody. Anybody.
My list from 10 to 1, number 10, Leo, number 9, Heart of the City, number 8, Luann, number 7, Bloom County, number 6, The Far Side, number 5, Rose's Rose, number 4, That a Baby, number 3, Foxtrot, number 2, Garfield, and number 1 is a tie between Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes.
Are there a couple that you really liked that you had to leave off the list?
I
noticed you didn't have For Better or For Worse, which surprised me.
Yeah, For Better or For Worse, I didn't have on my list because I didn't have enough room.
Yeah, I know. Top 10 is hard.
I liked U.S. Acres.
I didn't care for U.S. Acres.
I liked the comic better than the cartoon.
I came close to putting a few things. I loved Kathy. Kathy Geiswhite's wonderful
Kathy was
long-running
good.
strip. I loved John Darling, which a lot of people don't remember. It was a spinoff of Funky Winkerbean. John Darling was a Phil Donahue-esque talk show host, and they eventually killed him off in the strip. Because he left in a dispute, and he's like, I don't want them using my characters, so they had him murdered.
Wow.
At the end of the strip.
Damn.
And I'm like, wow, I don't remember that. I can't put him on the list then, because that would have pissed me off.
Yeah.
But I love, there's so many good ones out there.
The only other one I can think of that I would have liked to have put on my list, because it gets weird too, is Mother Goose and Grimm.
What's the weird one that has the pop culture references now that shows up? Like they had the water towers in one of them, and the weird water towers. The one that has like they had the ketchup water tower in one. And you showed that to me years ago.
I don't remember.
Zippy's
done that, I think.
Zippy the Pinhead.
Yes,
that's the one. Oh, Ziggy's good too. I mean, if you like general humor.
Yeah, Ziggy never did anything for me. It's
okay. We're going to actually tie in next week's show to this week's show.
Oh.
Sort of.
Okay.
Next week on Subject Cinema presents Front Row 5 and 10. Mm-hmm. That's this coming Thursday.
Right.
Our top 10 favorite all-time Charlie Brown specials.
Wow. Oh my gosh, this is going to be...
You're going to have to go back and think about this one for a while, because a lot of there's been 50 or more of them. You're going to have to go back and really try to figure out which ones were your favorites over the years. Because...
You're not going to include the movies? You're not going to...
No, not the movies. They have to be TV specials made for TV, and they can be like clip show, like a Schultz retrospective or something, if something about it stood out.
Okay.
But otherwise, you have to pick your all-time favoriteest, most Charlie Brown specials and why you like them so much.
Okay. Oof, it's going to be hard.
It's fun. We'll have fun. Don't forget to check out all of our other stuff on PNRNetworks. Mm-hmm. Starting next Saturday with the season premiere of Platinum Rose's Garden.
Yes, my show will be coming back next week, Platinum Rose's Garden. What did I say about not poking the tauntaun? You don't listen, do you?
That's not a tauntaun. That's Star Wars. This is something entirely different.
Well, don't poke the guardian angel either. Anyway, and don't poke the Impala, because she'll run you down. My show next week is...
I had a friend that had a car the same year, an Impala the same year as that car. Uh-huh. That car was ugly as schnit. But it was white. That's why.
Well, that's why,
yeah.
Anyway, I will be back celebrating the premiere episode of Season 13 of Supernatural.
Season 13.
Where we are dealing with the birth of the Antichrist in the episode Lost and Found. So hopefully
it's going to be a happy, earthy, crunchy Antichrist.
Are you done?
I actually read that somewhere online.
I gotta do my Blair Witch voice. I'm so scared.
I know.
So I would like to warn, if you've never listened to my show before, why the hell not? But my show is not safe for work. Mm-hmm. I do swear a lot. So
at PlatinumRosesGarden.com.
At PlatinumRosesGarden.com. And there are also the other shows that are part of our terrific little family, including TC's show, Catastrophe Vortex.
Catastrophe Vortex came back this week. Yay! It's on every other Wednesday until the end of this year.
Yay!
At least, and then
see, it's not fun when somebody does that.
I know
to you
don't like disaster movies. You like bad disaster movies. You enjoyed the hell out of watching Avalanche because you could misty the hell out of it.
Yeah, I will never forgive you for making me watch The Big Bus, though.
No, The Big Bus stinks. I just talked about The Big Bus on this last show. Catastrophe Vortex, all about disaster movies, and it's every other Wednesday. So I can actually keep a schedule. Mm-hmm. And I hope you'll tune into that. There's also, from the PNRNetworks family, our wonderful friends over at Comic Grotto, Aunt B and Pee Wee with Comic Grotto, doing comics and movies and TVs based on them every week at ComicGrotto.com, and Cavebabble with Eric and Valerie Lyon, taking on movies, TV, games, foods, and other things from their uniquely Missouri point of view. Cavebabble.com every week. Plus, of course, our own shows, Subject Cinema, our flagship show.
Yep.
Now in its 12th year. If you haven't checked it out, we hope you will. It's a lot of fun. SubjectCinema.com and PNRNetworks, eCinemaOne.com, where you can also find the mini shows we have on every week. Tuesday, Digidex, promoting, talking about all of the new video, bringing up, I can't say all, because I don't cover them all current and updated stuff coming out on home video, including streaming, DVD, Blu-ray, Amazon Prime, and Netflix every Tuesday morning. And on Friday morning, 3-Minute Weekend, with all of the new movie releases hitting U.S. theaters every week. And that's also at eCinemaOne.com. And you can subscribe to all of those. And you can get all of our shows, Subject Cinema, Front Row 5 and 10, 3-Minute Weekend, and Tuesday Digidex by downloading the Subject Cinema app. It's available at your fingertips. You can get all 4 shows right there and listen anytime. Please take the time to subscribe, and please take the time to spread the word. And let us know if you have any ideas for lists you'd like us to count up by dropping us a line at frontrow@pnrnetworks.com.
Yep. So we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the show. And
we're happy to be back.
We are happy to be back, and we hope we can count on you to come back next week and help us count up our new list. I'm Kim Brown.
I'm T.C. Kirkham.
And we'll see you next week here on Front Row 5 and 10.
Ciao.
Bye now.
You always have to get the last word in, don't you?
Yep.
You've been listening to Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and T.C. Kirkham.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.